I believe we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another in a series of Compass Improv interviews with prominent improv people. And boy, oh boy, I'm so glad this evening to be talking with Liz Allen. Hey, Liz, how are you?
Hi, Bob. I'm great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
You bet. We've got we started this new series this last month. We kicked it off with Bill Cott, who has a St. Louis background, and we've got some actually Ed Reggie's coming up and B.J. Lang, also
Great.
people with St. Louis connections. You have some St. Louis connections too, although I don't think you've ever lived here.
No?
Well, we're gonna find out more about you. So let me just kind of give. I'm gonna brag on you for just a moment here. And so for those of you who may not know all the details about Liz, she's a veteran improv performer and instructor, and her impressive credits include numerous shows that she's directed at the Second City and IO. We'll dig into a little bit of what those are about. Liz co-wrote a book called called Improvising Better that you co-authored with Jimmy Carrane, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this is so cool. So a few years ago, I saw the Mike Birbiglia movie "Don't Think Twice," which was awesome because you
Oh,
rarely
yeah.
see a major motion picture about about improv.
Right. You don't see
Um,
it often.
but I know you have some connection with that, and we're gonna dig into how you kind of influenced Mike, and also you did some coaching for that movie. You've also mentored improv coaches here at the Improv Shop in St. Louis, so I know that's your probably your main St. Louis connection. But that so yeah, so that's folks. If you're watching, and I know that you are, that's what you're in for. Couple of sort of this like preliminary things before I dive into turning the spotlight over to Liz. Again, this is a monthly series put on by Compass Improv, which is a nonprofit organization sort of dedicated to fostering the growth and spreading this art form that we love of improv in the St. Louis region and beyond. And for some of you who don't know, the reason it's called Compass Improv is it was inspired by the Compass Players that performed in the late 50s in an area called Gaslight Square in St. Louis. So actually, St. Louis has a long history. And some of those folks went on to form the Second City in Chicago in 1959. And so we're also going to be tying in these interviews with a charity. We're asking each a guest to name a nonprofit that they want to support. And this month with Liz, it's the Stepping Stones Network,
Mhm.
which we will talk about as we go along. And just real quickly, I'm Bob Baker. I'm on the board of Compass Improv, longtime improviser. I teach short form. I also co-wrote a book with Laura Hall from Whose Line Is It Anyway on the topic of musical improv. So I am totally immersed in this art form and love it and love rubbing elbows with people that are also doing this type of work and play. Also, just want to give a shout out to John Chapin. He is working behind the scenes. He's our behind the scenes tech guy, and he's going to be keeping an eye on the comments. And so at any time, start typing in some questions or comments that you have for Liz. John will share them with us, and we will a little bit later in the interview we will get to your questions. And so, all right, Liz, now I'm ready to
Okay,
stop
let's do
stop
it.
talking and put it in your. So here's an opening question, which is I think is something I like to ask. So can you pinpoint the moment when you first became aware of improv? However many years
Yes.
ago that was. Like,
Long time ago,
I would
Bob.
love to hear that story. Yeah,
It was
like
almost 30 years ago. I had moved to Chicago for the summer of 1990 for a whole different job and a whole different career. I came to Chicago just for the summer. It was supposed to be to work on a project for Abbott Laboratories.
oh
I had a
wow,
really generous project manager, and he took us all around Chicago on his expense account. And he introduced me to someone who said, "Oh, there's this place called Second City," and I literally said, "What's Second City?" I had no idea.
hmm
And um, she said, "Well, I think you'd enjoy it." And then my project manager said, "You know, you're funny at meetings. I think you'd enjoy Second City too. It's like a comedy club," is the way it was described to me. They didn't even say the word improv. So I show up for a show, and that's when I hear in the show, it turns out it was a level 5 student show. They said, "We're going to improvise." And I definitely remember that whole evening thinking, improvise? They don't know what they're going to do. And they're on stage. And at this point, I was 27 and
Wow.
had not even considered a life immersed in improv. And that I walked away from that show and at thinking I'm going to take a class in improv. And they announce at the end, like they always do, if you're interested in doing what you saw tonight, sign up for classes. So I did, and the rest is history. That evening, everything changed for my entire life, because I remember just being blown away that they truly didn't have scripts. And I thought, there's got to be a trick. Surely they have a few ideas of what they're going to say.
Yeah, it's too smooth. They can't do that just off the cuff, right? That's an awesome story. So you said you I know you have a history in Chicago. Were you originally where did you grow up? I guess
I grew up in North Carolina. Where's my phone? I have to show my sticker for NC State. I went to North Carolina. My son put the sticker. I think of this as like my diploma. Yeah. I grew up in Chapel Hill, and I took a brief sojourn from North Carolina. I went to high school in Pittsburgh, and then I went back to North Carolina State University for college. And then I moved around after college, and one of the jobs I got was in Chicago. And I never wanted to leave after I came here in Chicago in 1990. I did leave briefly, but Chicago is like my second home.
Cool. So this was like 1990, and so you saw that show and pretty quickly signed up for, I guess, the introductory class. Yeah. And then did you go through all the levels and all that stuff?
Oh yeah. And okay, Bob, I don't know if you know this or remember, but Second City used to have a suburban location in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, which is right near Schaumburg, right near the mall out on Gulf Road. And I was living in the suburbs of Chicago, and I thought, well, that's convenient. I live in Downers Grove. I'll take a class in Rolling Meadows. And they lost my check. And I took it as a sign, also a check. Isn't that funny? I mailed them my check. They lost it. And I thought, well, I guess I'm not supposed to take a class. I guess that's a sign. Don't be a dope. And then they called back and said, well, we feel bad. We'll, we'll make you a space in the next section if you want to send us another, send us another check, and we'll get you signed up again. And I was like, all right. And that session in Rolling Meadows is when I met Judy Fabjance and Bob Dassey and Ed Dassey and Paul Grandi. All these people were all students in a similar level one. And so I met them when we would sub each other's classes.
Wow.
And my first teacher was Nia Vardalos. And she was a great first teacher of improv, because she was so very welcoming and wasn't an intimidating teacher. She didn't overwhelm us. She was very calm and a welcoming teacher. And so I took all the classes at Rolling Meadows. And then we heard, if you really want to study sort of the cutting edge improv at the time, they said, go downtown to this place called Improv Olympia. That's what it was called at the time.
Or Improv Olympic, I think.
Yeah, but even before it went back, sometimes it was Improv Olympia and sometimes it was Improv Olympic. And, I have a calendar downstairs from 1993 that was my first class here in Chicago with what is now IO.
Oh, wow. And I know, so a little quick side story. A friend of mine, somebody else, I was in an improv troupe in the late 90s called Wits End. And one of the guys in it actually reached out and got Sharna Halpern to come. He paid her and arranged for her to come and teach a weekend workshop around 98-ish, I want to say. And I attended that. I got her. Yeah, I got the book. And so that was my brush with greatness. And that was before I even really knew about long form and about, God, who's the Herald, her partner, Del Close. Yeah, I was really new to it, relatively speaking. And so, yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Sure.
And I guess those are kind of the two main, like Second City was the first in 1959, IO, which I guess is now no longer in existence. No longer. Wow, that's really sad. Yeah.
I know. 40,
but they were like
40 years.
Wow. And they were the two I guess mainstays, and then there are other things that have come along in Chicago, but did you get involved in both places over time?
Yeah, I did. I did a lot of cross-pollination. I took also the downtown training center of Second City. I never did the annoyance, which I would say is the most important sort of third leg of the improv stool, if you will, which sounds terrible, in Chicago, but it's IO, Second City, and the annoyance, I think, for so long get so much credit for just illuminating improv, bringing different styles, and then you can sort of pick and choose. but I suck mostly. Most of my career, my time in Chicago has been with IO. I took a lot of classes at Second City, but I never got hired to do their touring company or main stage or anything. I auditioned and I never got hired. So I just
Okay.
sort of stuck with IO and figured all my dreams were going to come through IO. And I had no idea I was going to love teaching. I didn't know, Bob. I didn't know that teaching was going to be the thing that thrills me as much, if not more, than anything I've ever done, is coaching and teaching
Yeah.
improv. Isn't that interesting how
It is. Yeah.
you
So
don't know?
I mentioned to you before we went live that I first started doing improv in 1985 here
Love
in
that.
St. Louis. It was a group of friends that were doing theater and college and community theater, and we were big fans of Saturday Night Live, and we had heard that they had all come through Second City, and so let's do this improv thing, and we formed a troupe. And then there was a guy who had taken classes or something at Second City who had moved back to St. Louis, and he was kind of our core guy that kind of taught us some stuff. I forgot what I was saying about. But then I was in and out of it for a long time, and I kept having these conversations with groups of friends where I was saying I think it would be fun to teach. Short form has always been my thing, but I was
Right?
only talking about it, and I had a friend who stopped me one time. She says, "Set a date." She goes, "I've heard you talk about this. Every time you talk about improv and teaching it, you light up, but set a date and I'll be there." And then everybody at the table go, "Yeah, I'll come too." So
No way.
that's how it was. A friend who put me on the spot, and I thank her to this day. I thanked her in the musical improv book for being that catalyst to get me to teach.
Isn't that just so interesting how that fire starts to burn, because in a good way? Because I remember being in a class at Second City and being frustrated with the learning process and
Mhm.
thinking, I truly had this thought, like Scarlett O'Hara. You'll see where I'm going with that in a minute, which is, I thought, if I ever get good enough at this art form that I can ever teach it, I'm going to try really hard to be direct, compassionate, and direct.
Direct was there
Because I felt
twice.
like so much of it was taught without compassionate, and it was taught sometimes in a convoluted way. And I got so irritated. I was like, why is it so different teacher to teacher? Why can't there be a little more consistency? And then I began to understand that that's the nature of teaching art. It's lots of different viewpoints. So I was like, oh, if I ever get good enough, I'd like to really put my mind to how I'm going to teach long form.
So how far into it, if you discovered it and started taking classes around 1990, when did the teaching thing, when was that seed planted, or did you start that?
I would say it was about 3 or 4 years later. I don't
Oh.
know the exact date, and I should. I need to write it down because Sharna gave me a team, because I kept going to her going, I really, I had this great experience on my team called Frank Booth. I loved my team. I still do. We still meet sometimes after 20 some years on Zoom. Now we meet and chit chat and perform sometimes. And I said to her, I'd like to help another team have the kind of wonderful ensemble experience I had with Frank Booth. Can I please have a team to coach? And she'd be like, well, there's a lot of people in front of you who want to coach. Sorry. And then miraculously, I got this first team called Valhalla, and I loved it. And it was as fulfilling coaching, if not more, than I had ever thought it would be. And I've kind of never looked back in terms of coaching and teaching.
So, would you? And that's pretty relatively, like, just 3 or 4 years into
Yeah.
learning it to become a teacher. But that's what happens also when it's like a new an evolving art form. There's only so many, Yeah,
It was tiny. Bob,
yeah.
the community was so tiny. We could all fit in Sharna's house for a party. It was so tiny.
And so would you say that from that point on you focus more on the coaching and the teaching than the performing, or did you continue to do both? Because I know it says here that you've directed some shows, and then
Yeah.
there's a Las Vegas thing that we haven't talked about yet with Second City, and yeah. So maybe
We'll get to that.
give me a little overview of your of directing and performing versus teaching, and
Well, I
yeah,
kept performing, thankfully, the whole time as I was coaching. I felt like it kept me sort of engaged to be a better coach, to continue performing. Also, I didn't want to quit performing. I just also loved coaching. What I did quit was auditioning for Saturday Night Live. It wasn't my thing. Like, I really thought I was going to try to go on that track, because that's sort of where everyone else was going. And that we didn't know improv was going to take you to any other TV. There was no, improv wasn't a train to anywhere but maybe SNL.
Right. That's what everybody, that was the goal for everyone.
Right. And so I was like, I guess that's my goal. And then one day I realized I don't really like to write sketch. I do like to direct it. I don't like to write it. And I don't do very good impressions. Why would I end up on SNL? It was such a bad fit. And after I sort of gave up on that and thought, okay, I'm going to enjoy performing. I'm going to enjoy coaching. And then some people asked me to direct some shows, and it sort of became a snowball about coaching and directing. And then I finally quit performing when I did move to Vegas in 2004. I sort of backed off performing, and then I moved back to Chicago in 2017, and I was performing a little more. The bug has bit me again, and then the lockdown came. So look out when the pandemic's over.
Look out. But
I might be in a black box near you.
But you directed, was it something for Second City that you directed while you were in Las Vegas?
Yeah, very nicely. I moved there when I had a young baby, and my husband got a job offer in Vegas in the gaming world, in a odd, as a bill validator worker, as a person who helps sell and design, in the slot machines when you put in a bill to make sure that it's legitimate.
Okay. Validation makes it's a legitimate bill. Okay.
A legitimate bill validator. And Second City said, while you're out there, we've got this show at the Flamingo. Would you be interested in directing a long form show on the Strip? And the best we can guess, it's the first long form that's ever been on the Strip ever.
Wow.
And we ran for a year, and I'm very proud of that. We got an A- in the Review Journal. So Second City asked me to direct out there. And then I don't want to make this interview dark and depressing. And I also feel like I'm talking too long.
No, you're the guest, so the spotlight is on you. Is it safe to say that? And I know that IO is known for long form, and then Second City is actually, even though they're known for improv, they're also, their touring companies. There's a lot of sketch involved, and actually sketches the scripted stuff comes out of improvised scenes, whereas other things are strictly improv. But is it safe to say that your primary focus is on what you teach and what you performed is long form?
Yeah, I would say that's the predominant area of my interest. It's sort of what intrigues me. I like creating a very long 45-minute, hour-long piece of cohesive theater that weaves back on itself and wraps around itself. But I do love directing sketch from improv because, as you know, these things that come up improvisationally are so amazing. You think, let's capture that. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Let's capture that. And I coached for a long time. There's this group called Mission Improbable, and they do mostly short form. They moved to Chicago in 98 and asked me to teach them long form. So that was really fun to take all their strengths from short form and see if we could find a marriage between short form and long form.
Oh, cool. And then I mentioned my interest and involvement in musical improv. Have you ever done any of that or directed any music?
Well, this is my public announcement. I can't carry a tune in a paper bag. I have taken singing lessons. And I've been told one time, and I was a part of a group, just like Andy Griffith and Barney Fife, I was told to maybe mouth the words. I just don't sing very well. However, I am musical. I dance and I played piano growing up, but I don't sing. So that I was never able to be part of that. I've directed some musical improv.
So you've been involved in it, and you kind of probably know what works. And
yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
But I just don't ask me to, if you ask me to improvise a song, I'll do it. Right. Please don't ask me right now. But it will be, I don't have the voice of an angel.
Well, neither does Colin Mockery, if I'm going to make a Who's Line reference, but he is good at musical improv because he's good at rhyming. He's good at just owning it and staying in character, so it's really not about having the beautiful voice. It helps.
It's about commitment. It's just about commitment. Like all of improv, but even more so, I feel like musically. And once when I realized that, I quit getting intimidated by it. And I do love directing musical improv because you've got this whole extra element, song, that's gorgeous.
Absolutely. So cool. So I got a bunch of more questions here, and I know I'm going to encourage people, even though we maybe toward the end when we get to a lot of them. But please go ahead and type in any questions that you have for Liz. I still have a bunch of more stuff I want to sort of pull out of you while we have you here. This interview is going to be about an hour, so we still got a good 40 minutes in front of us here to dive deep into some of this stuff. But let's talk about the charity that you have selected. So I'm going to give John, our tech person behind the scenes, a heads up to go ahead and pull up that graphic whenever. And so why Stepping Stones Network? Liz, can you just kind of tell me why this was meant something to you and why you chose this, and anything you want to say about the organization?
Sure. Well, the Stepping Stones Network is just a beautiful collection of people that work in an area that is a touchy, tender area about sexual exploitations. And the Stepping Stones Network is about educating the community about the presence of sexual exploitations, things like human trafficking in our communities around us. And they also offer services to help rehabilitate. They offer privacy, situations that are private, so people who are fleeing exploitive situations can get help from this community. The Stepping Stones Network, I just find it to be such a selfless organization to help, a lot of women and children, but mostly women and children, but just people who are in a situation that they're being completely exploited and taken advantage of. And it's a ray of hope for people in those situations.
Yeah, and then you've actually done some. I don't know how many years this goes back, but you've done some events and fundraisers using improv for the.
Yes, the lady Colette Mendelson, who does amazing work in charge of the Stepping Stones Network, allowed me to do an improv fundraiser to use improv as a way to bring people in to laugh, to maybe laugh and give money to help about such a dark topic. She was very nice to take a risk, because an improv show is not your regular old fundraiser. It's risky because you don't know what's going to happen. So when you invite people there to invite improv, you never quite know what's going to happen. And she was such a good sport about that. And that was right before, actually, the fall before the lockdown. So I hope when we're done with all this, we can go back out in person and fill the same theater with people who want to contribute to this cause.
Cool. And here's we're doing our part here. And so this is how this works with this interview series. Again, this is the second one. And this is and so what we're going to encourage you to do is basically Compass Improv is going to collect your donations, and we'll total them up, and then we will write a check and send it to the Stepping Stones Network. So there should be right on your screen there the page for that. So it's compassimprov.org, and if you go to /donate, that you can go to that page, select the amount of your choice, and pretty much that's only anything that we collect between now and midnight on Friday. So what is it, the 22nd here now, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 20, whatever, the 25th, whatever Friday is, anything that comes in through that donation link, we will total up. Compass sometimes will add a little to it to match. I think we're going to match at least the first $50 in donations that come in. So if that gives you an extra incentive, you can double your donation there. And so please do be generous and go to that link and send it in, and we will send anything that we collect with our additional amount on top to a Stepping Stone. So thanks,
Thank
Liz.
you. Well, thank you, Bob. That's really generous and sweet of you. And before I started thinking about helping to raise money for this organization, when people would say every dollar counts, I thought, it won't matter if I send $1. It really does. It really does matter.
It does, yeah. And they're doing good work. So I want to ask you about you are also a published author, and so tell me about your collaboration with Jimmy Carrane. Like, how did you know him? How did the book come about? What is it about? It's called Improvising Better, right?
A guide for the working improviser. Pardon me. Jimmy thought it was really important that we have the word improv in the title and the subtitle for searching
that's smart
capabilities. And at first I disagreed with him, and then I thought, no, he's right. That's a good idea. Well, I grew up in the 90s watching Jimmy as a part of, he's 1 or 2 generations ahead of me improvisationally. We all talk about where we are in our Chicago generations. And Jimmy is a couple of generations ahead of me, and he was part of the group that was Jazz Freddy, that had like Dave Keckner and Rachel Dratch, and I'm blanking on so many amazing people from that time period that we grew up watching and adoring.
Yeah.
So Jimmy was one of those people that, like Dave Rosowski, you know, we'd see him at a party and we'd think, oh my gosh, is he really going to talk to us? You know, when you're a baby improviser and you're new in the training center.
Mhm.
So then one day at IO, Jimmy heard me teaching, and we'd cross paths some, and he thought maybe we'd teach a workshop together, which we did, called the individual assessment workshop, to help people sort of understand themselves better. And we thought our points of view, which are different, might be a good mesh because of the way we both look at improv differently but similarly. And then out of that, we had a couple of topics, and we thought this kind of makes a book. So we wrote a 76-page book pamphlet that I'm very proud of in 2006. It stayed in print now for 14 years.
Oh, okay. It came out that long ago. Oh, cool.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Nice. And then I know Jimmy's got, I mean, I kind of know him because he has a podcast where he interviews improvisers.
Yeah, the Improv Nerd. It's very successful. Yeah, Jimmy is just one of those improvisers that I don't, even after working with him all this time and writing a book with him, sometimes I still don't know completely how his brain works and how he makes his improv decisions. And yet every time he improvises, I find him captivating. And he's been someone that I really learned a lot from over the years.
Oh, cool. Well, that's awesome. And then, and so now let's talk about Mike Birbiglia, and the movie. Don't Think Twice. So I think it was when I was Googling information about you, and I came across, I think it was a piece that was on NPR where I think he's quoted in there as saying, was it attending one of your classes, some sort of a catalyst for him? But maybe you can tell me, I didn't get the full gist of it, but maybe you can explain that story. Yeah.
He's so sweet. I know that interview you're talking about. That I think that was with Elizabeth Blair. She interviewed us with for Don't Think Twice on NPR. Okay. Here's my Mike Birbiglia connection, which is kind of mind-blowing, but it's an interesting story for everybody who's a teacher of anything. You never know who you're going to teach because you don't know who they're going to become later, right? So I taught Mike when he was a student at Georgetown in 1998, I think it was the year. My group, Frank Booth, who I mentioned earlier, got hired through Sharna to come out to Georgetown to do a show and a weekend of workshops. It turned out Mike's improv friend or director at Georgetown had seen Frank Booth, called Sharna, asked her to send us out.
Oh, cool. Wow.
So there were 5 of us that went out, and they randomly assigned the Georgetown people to different workshops that we were in. And Mike randomly got assigned to mine. And we just connected, and we had an interesting conversation afterwards talking about the passion of improv. And then that was it. You know, I left those college kids in Georgetown and came back to my life in Chicago.
I didn't think anything of it. Yeah.
Right. 15 years later, right? And I'd seen his career, but did not recall at the time that he was in my workshop. I remember thinking like, this guy, Mike Birbiglia, is hilarious. What a funny stand-up. Oh my gosh. And then through our friend Tammy Sager, whom they met in New York, he sends a message that says, say hi to Liz and all of Frank Booth, Lily Francis. And I was like, I know him. And then I thought, I do.
That was that dude. Yeah.
So then he very nicely, we emailed, got back in touch, and he said, it's been a long time. And then, of course, I recalled our original meeting, and he said, would you mind reading this movie I've written about improv just to get your opinion? And I was blown away. I remember it was just one of those things you hear about where I couldn't stop turning the pages fast enough.
Wow.
Because he captured the misery of improv. He didn't gloss it over. He didn't try to make it seem glamorous. He captured the inner workings of a team, which you know what all that's like.
Yeah.
The family.
Yeah.
And so I wrote him my comments, and then he said, well, I need this group to learn a little bit of improv. And he was so busy with the writing and the directing. He said, can you fly to New York and coach them some improv? Because 2 of the cast members had never improvised before. So we kind of had to get them to a place where the group looked like they'd been an ensemble for 11 years.
Yeah. Well, Keegan Michael Key was a main character in that. He's had a lot of improv experience, right?
Right.
Yeah. Very good. at it, and I can't remember the rest of the
Well,
cast.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's Keegan and Chris Gethard and Tammy Sager and Mike in the ensemble were the most experienced improvisers. And then Gillian Jacobs and Kate McCucci had never improvised. Well, they'd done a little bit in their theater background,
Right.
but they hadn't improvised like the way that the other four had. And they were so game for jumping in and learning improv. And then the other four, of course, were so accepting and inclusive. And you and I both know that it doesn't matter as long as everyone is agreeing and working together. So I was flattered and honored that Mike gave me the chance to work with them behind the scenes so that their improv on screen would feel very pure, as though they'd worked together literally for a decade.
So when you went to the premiere, saw the movie for the first time, did you feel proud? Did you see your work
Oh
in
my
action
God, I
there?
was bawling like a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just so, I keep saying this over and over. It's boring. I was so honored that Mike gave me something so precious of his to
Mhm.
have some influence over. I was so honored by that. And the cast was so open and wonderful. And then to see it as a real product on screen, we never see our improv captured like that on screen, bigger than life. And yes, it was a beautiful memory, a beautiful experience. And to think back that it all happened because I happened to go to that show at Second City, and I was intrigued by improv.
Yeah, and look at all the things that happened. Did Mike get a chance to remind you of the impact that your class that he attended at Georgetown what had on?
Yeah, he's very
on
sweet. I mean, he's
on
very
him?
sweet. He talks about that a lot, about how, when our paths crossed way back when, that
Mm.
it was a very meaningful path crossing, because we didn't realize that we were going to be creatively connected going forward. And I'm just so grateful for that experience. And it's like its own long form, right?
Mhm.
You meet, you don't know what it means, you don't know where it's going. We were just in a really, really long form. That's why I tell them we were in a 15-year long form.
That's funny.
We just didn't know. But what I love is that, and this is interesting, Bob, and I think you'll understand this, and other improvisers out there. Mike and I hadn't talked for years and years, right? And we meet, and it's just like, hey, here's my project. Oh, okay. And we just hit the ground running, and we spoke very little actually about the goal of the movie, because we understood each other so well. And I just thought that was so interesting, that that's what long form is. You read each other's minds and you create something that takes a while.
Wow, that is very cool. I know we're getting some questions coming in that I'm going to get to in just a moment here, but I'm just want to ask you one more of my own here. So if you had a sum, like, everyone's kind of has a different approach. Like you even mentioned in your collaboration with Jimmy Carrane that there are similarities, but there are differences in your styles or approaches. So if you had to sum up like what you're known for, or the biggest thing that you bring to the table as an improviser or coach, like what's that unique thing about you that you bring to this work? If I were to put you
Oh,
on the
that's
spot.
interesting. Okay. Okay. No, that's a good question. I think my answer revolves around ensemble. I can't talk about improv. I can't teach it. I can't approach improv without considering the group first. The
Mhm.
group eclipses all individuals, the group and what the group wants to say, group voice. I really approach it from an ensemble viewpoint. Every class I teach, even if it's a one-time workshop for 2 hours, I have to form them into a little bit of an ensemble where I get a sense of their ensemble, even if I just take 12 minutes at the top to get the group going, because improv to me is all about, what does this group have to say on this day about something. So for me, I'm so steeped. I would say I'm steeped in groupness.
Groupness. Okay, so yeah, so it's not about and that, well, we even before we went live, I said, I got your back, I got your back.
Right.
Do you happen to know the somebody told me that started a Second City? Do you even know the origin of that phrase that prior to a show?
No, I don't. I thought the cavemen used that phrase.
The caveman.
I've got your back. I'm going to make a wheel. Okay, we got your back.
I'm gonna roll over your back with this wheel. Because I think in Mike's movie, I think they even say that. I think early on, right? But yeah. So it's you're there to support each other, make each other look good. So it's got to be beyond just how funny am I? How clever can I come up with a good line here?
Yeah, it's not about clever. I think it's really about being authentic to what you're feeling. And I think the clever comes out though in improv. And I think you would agree with this, that people who are drawn to it are satirical and they have something to say about the world. And that's where the clever comes out, as like a sense of satire about the world. But to me, I can't approach improv without conjoining to other people first.
Right. And I know that, so a lot of people, and maybe somebody's watching right now who's intrigued by improv, but there's so many people that go, oh, I could never do that. And they say that thinking, and quite often, I'm sure you've heard this comment, I'm not funny, I'm not quick, and I'm going, good, because that's not what I'm going to be asking you to do.
I agree, Bob. I actually just spoke to someone recently about introverts and improv, and she said, oh, well, I'm a bit of an introvert. I was like, good. That means you listen, you're observant about your world, and you don't want a lot of the spotlight. You'll do great.
Yeah.
But I feel like, too, I want to just go back to what I said about group. I don't think I'm unique in how I look at it for a group. There's lots of other teachers that do that. That just happens to also be my view. Like, I don't have the market cornered on group, but that is how I approach it. But there's lots of great teachers out there who really teach from an ensemble point of view as well. Yeah. I just wanted to say that.
And I'm like, it's personally, I love short form. That's kind of my main. I really appreciate long form, but I just love, I guess maybe because I grew up or watched a lot of Who's Line, and I like the interaction with the audience. I even said this, I think, with my interview with Bill, how I love. The games are short and you're always getting a new suggestion, so they're sort of involved all the way through. Yes. I like that aspect of it. And I forgot where I was going.
Can I add something to that while you're
sure.
So what I love about short form is what you're describing, that the players and the audience actually become an ensemble that night.
Yeah.
And they work off of each other. That's my way into short form, is that ensemble viewpoint from the audience to the short form. But I always take my hat off to people who can do short form. It took me years to really do it to where I felt like I was competent. I was not naturally very good at, like golf. I just was not very good at short form.
I know. I was going to say. So I like the comedic aspect. So yeah, I definitely. And I know improv is used for all sorts of things. There's therapeutic things. Just not every scene has to be serious, especially in long form. But I do like the whole sense that like laughter is just a huge value for me, and so I love being able to make people laugh. And so there's definitely, but it's not based on one-liners or being quick or upstaging people or so it comes organically out of the situations that you're creating with the input of the audience, I guess is where I'm.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Where I'm coming from.
That's well put.
So let's go to some questions here. Oh yeah, a bunch of are coming in here. So this is kind of a general one. So I don't know. But Diego asked, "What is a valuable lesson you have learned while doing improv?" I know that's pretty wide open. But
whoa, that's a good one though, Diego.
Yeah.
I think the valuable lesson I learned is that there's a place for extreme confidence and a place for extreme humility. And maybe I didn't understand that balance until improv. There's moments that the group needs me to go boldly forth, and there's moments that the group needs me to shut up and support. And improv taught me how to intuit that. And then I took that off stage as well, that maybe there's times in my life I have to be confident. Like I'm a mom. I have to be a confident mom. But there's times I have to shut up and listen to my child and just be supportive through silence. Or very little bit of support. So I would say confidence and humility.
That's good. That's yeah. And it seems to be, there's a lot of times there's seemingly contradictory messages that you're sending to players, like that. Be bold, but also, just be supportive and quiet.
Yep.
And I know my advice for like new students, like sometimes a lot of new students are timid. And so with those people, you want to push them. Just, go ahead and say it with what if you don't know what to say, stand proudly with your chest out. I have no idea what to say,
Right.
And so you have to like push them to be more assertive. And then other people, they'll come in there and either because of nerves or because they think that's how they have to be funny, they're like they're just like too energized in scenes and like and monopolize the dialogue. And I go, those people, you got to go, okay, dial it back a little bit,
That's right.
So it's just, there's that balance that it's like a seesaw that you can attain. That's why we rehearse this stuff and get training. Oh, cool. So Jen asks, what is your approach to directing versus coaching? What's the distinction between directing improv and coaching it?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It took me a while to figure that out in my career, actually. And what I've decided is directing is something that I do up front for a short amount of time. And I may touch base with the group after the show is launched, but directing, just like in sort of scripted theater, the director kind of goes away after the show opens. Sometimes in improv, I would show up to tweak the show or just touch base with everyone. But directing is definitely a shorter amount of time. Coaching, every group I ever coach, I coach them like I'm going to coach them forever. It doesn't usually turn out to be forever at all, and for lots of different reasons, and that's okay. But my approach to being a coach is that I'll be engaged with this group in some way or another forever. And then there's just been a handful that's happened. But coaching is never a short amount of time. Coaching is to me, it's like an investment.
Mm-hmm.
And directing, you invest, but then there's a hard stop to the time.
And you think that every team or every group, because I know I have to admit, in a lot of the short form things that I've done, there wasn't an outside coach, like somebody, like I have to admit, my own shows that I do now. It's a collaborative effort. We don't have like an outside coach. What's the value of having someone who's not in the group coaching a team? I'm sure there's a ton, and I'm going to be schooled here.
No. I don't mind self-coaching. I think that's terrific as long as it's egalitarian and everyone gets their turn in the coaching seat. Yeah. As long as and then if there's one person who absolutely doesn't ever want to coach, as long as the group's fine with it, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with internally coached groups. The value of that is that it's an intimate knowledge of the group and you know what it feels like being in the group. The value of the outside eye is just like any director is going to see and perceive the group in a way that the group could never perceive themselves. Right. The outside director also has zero investment. Hopefully, if they're a good coach, the outside coach has zero investment in the product. Mm-hmm. The outside coach just comes in to help with the process and can join the group. Wow. I don't mind internally directed as long as everybody gets a fair shot. The tough part of that is notes, though. It's hard to give your friends notes, and so the outside director is always the better person to give notes.
Right. You have to go easy when you're when it's your fellow performer. Yeah. It's a lot. So wow, we're getting a lot of questions here. So Doug asks, is there anything in your own improv that you understood better after you began improvising?
Teaching.
In your that you understood. Okay, that you understood. Oh, after you began teaching. Okay, thank you, John.
I mean, I think everybody who does anything that should have to teach anything, and I don't think I'm unique in that view. I think that's a kind of commonly held view that like you never really know anything until you have to teach it. Mm-hmm, and I would say the number one thing I learned is, and I constantly have to learn this lesson. This is a lesson that's really important, which is when something is aggravating me as a teacher, I need to be a little more gentle in how I give the note. And I didn't really understand, like I'd said, if I ever get good at this art form and I teach it, I want to be direct, compassionate, direct. The compassionate part is so important. And I'm always reminded that when something's bothering me as a teacher, I need to be a little more compassionate than I think I am being. Mm-hmm. And I didn't learn that until teaching. I mean, I didn't realize just how tender the heart of an improviser is until I started teaching.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's awesome. Yeah. Another thing is the best way to learn something is to write a book about it.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yes, I know a lot more about musical improv now that I
Ah,
co-wrote that. Um, let's see here. Oh, and John, our John Chapin, who's handling the behind the scenes tech, he says, "Can you tell us a little bit about the forms you have created and what that process looks like?"
oh my gosh. I wish I had my manila folder up here. I love creating forms. I create forms all the time, all the time.
Mm.
I created a form and I like to create forms on the fly, like right before we go on stage, because then there's this immediacy and we're not only improvising the content of what we're doing, we're figuring out the form as we go. I invented this form in Vegas called Silent Silverado about the power of having a silent person in the first beat who speaks in the second beat. And then that's expanded out into all sorts of exercises from silence to speaking. So there's one form that I created. I actually have a folder of forms.
That's cool.
I love making, like, I'll make up a new form for a class a lot of time, and they're not that original in the sense that it's not like I'm coming up, everybody's heard of the monologue, but I'll come up with a form that really focuses on monologue, or a form that really focuses on exploring walk-on characters, and I'll make people do walk-ons in the first 3 scenes, and then those walk-on characters become what the whole show's about. What was the question?
Oh yeah. How do you? What some of the forms you created and what the process is? Yeah. Do you have to test them out to see if they have legs, or you just? Well, you said before performance, you just let's try
I let
this.
it
Let's
fly,
go.
and then we figured out. I've learned a couple of things about creating form and the process of creating form over the years. I love learning the basics. Learn Harold, learn Laurent, learn Armando, learn the living room, learn how to navigate the waters of long form. And then when your coach throws you a new form, or the group together comes up with a new form, you begin to get a sense of what's going to have the most potential and what isn't. They need some mathematical structure. Forms do well with bookends. Forms do well with revisitation that makes sense in the threes and the fives, like the rules of threes, in comedy. And I always say, if you do something 4 times, you have to do it 5 times. So forms like mathematical symmetry, and you also have to have a place in every single form that's the uncertain land.
Ooh.
Nothing can be too laid down and completely certain. There must be a little part of every form that everyone's like, I don't know. And that's what keeps it exciting.
That is cool. So prior to the pandemic, one of the regular events that Compass, our organization, used to do is something called Open Court, where improvisers would show up. Basically, anybody who wanted to perform put their name into a bucket, and teams were randomly drawn, and there were already assigned coaches, and you would get together like 15 minutes before you would perform, and they would teach you the form or tell you the form, and you went up and did it with people. Yeah, that's so. Talk about just doing it right before you go up.
Oh my gosh. And I'm going to say, I just want to tuck onto this. One of the things I've learned in the process of form, and I learned this in Vegas when people didn't have a lot of long form to watch, I started bringing a chart, and we called it chart prov. And so they could learn it by looking at it on a chart. It did help in that moment when you're just so overwhelmed with the long form.
That's cool. Wow. That's great conversations here. And then let's see here. It's Ronaldo. What's your advice to new improvisers who have confidence issues?
My advice is, don't be afraid to take a level over again. Take level 1, maybe take it again, then take level 2 and level 3, then maybe take level 3 twice. Like, don't feel rushed to get through your learning, because part of being overwhelmed with being an improviser is you don't know what you're about to get into. You don't know what you're going to say. You don't know who these people are. You don't know what the curriculum is. You don't know where you're going to park. And once you learn some things, like, oh, I know where I park and I know where I go and get coffee, then do it again with a little calmness, and it will help build your confidence. And I ran the training center at IO for several years. And I swear this wasn't a ploy to make more money. It was a way to make some things known. Like, you go through the curriculum and then you're like, okay, now I can do that again with a little more confidence.
Cool. That's fabulous. And then Sean asks if one was interested in reaching out or for setting up a Zoom guest coaching practice, for a musical improv team, How would they go about
That
that?
sounds like a question for you, Bob.
Yeah, we've interested in reaching out for
Give him
setting
your
up.
phone number.
Yeah, really, a group guest coaching practice for a musical. How would you go? Yeah, so I don't know exactly, Sean, what what yet the specifics. Are you wondering like the technicalities of it, or how to?
Oh, maybe is it improv music over Zoom? Because I don't know how to. I haven't roped that calf at all. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it's been a challenge, and so and I'll just and Sean reach out to me, yeah, through Facebook or through if you want to learn more, if that is indeed what your question is about. So I learned a lot. Yeah, we've done monthly shows where we do in a 90-minute show, we do like 4 musical games, and we've had to learn how to tweak the settings.
Amazing.
And there's certain things you cannot do. You can't have simultaneous singing of choruses. It's because there's no sync there. But we have figured out ways to do musical improv, and I actually taught a 2-hour musical improv class recently where I made it work somehow.
That's amazing. I'm so impressed. Good
Yeah.
for you.
And you have to do things like where you there's like pauses, like you can't do like a fast rhythm thing and have someone sing it, but you can do a slower rhythm or have something that goes da 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 da, like leave little holes where people come in with their vocals. And there's just that's not the purpose of this interview, so I won't go down that rabbit hole.
Oh,
But
I don't know. That sounds pretty useful.
yeah, but so there are ways around it. Yeah, that you can make it work. So Sean, if you want to add any clarification to that, or reach out to me or Liz. Doug. Oh wait, no. Oh, okay. That's right.
Okay, great.
That was the last one that we've got here. So I've got So we talked a lot. Yeah. So you got some. So here's some generic kind of general questions. You may have already touched on some of these, but you might have some other insight. Top tips for beginning improvisers. We talked about the confidence thing, but what's like somebody who's like really new to it, or maybe they're thinking about taking their first class, or maybe they're in level 1 or 2, or whatever. What's a top tip for those folks?
Well, it's so hard to really learn to listen, like to really listen, to absorb, to turn off your own internal monologue and really hear what people are saying. And I think early improvisers don't realize that they can practice listening outside of class. Like when we get older and we've improvised for a while, we begin to go to a family reunion and just practice listening to maybe distract us from the irritation of being at the family reunion.
Right.
And I think my tip to early improvisers would be see if you can shut off your internal monologue at work, or you're with some church members on Zoom, or you're talking to your neighbor on the phone. Absorb it so much that you could repeat 1 or 2 nuggets later to yourself. I didn't understand about absorption and listening at first. It took me years to get that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would recommend.
And it takes the pressure off of yourself, because a new improviser in their head, they're going, "Oh God, I got to say something funny. I got to say where's the scene going?" As opposed to just being totally present and paying attention. What is my partner saying? How are they holding their body? How are they saying it? What's the subtext? And what are they communicating to me? So but that's a learned skill for a lot of people, because we spend way too much time in our heads overanalyzing things.
We
right?
do, and we don't know soon enough. Like you can start doing that in the first day. You take a level 1. You can begin to train yourself and challenge yourself to absorb more of what's going on. But see, just what you said, we're always worried about what am I going to say back. And the thing about improv is that words get delivered. You just open your mouth, and if you're connected, the most beautiful things are going to be said.
Yeah. And what do you think about if and I learned the things that I like to, the thing that's been helpful for me is if the emotional point of view of the character that you're playing, it's a lot easier to know what to say. And if does that make sense too?
Yeah. And isn't that singing too? Like the whole idea is that singing has this emotional point of view. So I think that's a beautiful lesson for the rest of us who aren't singers.
Mm-hmm. There's an exercise. One of the exercises I do in my musical improv is I have like maybe 5 different people sing happy birthday to a character. And so everybody already knows the melody and the words to happy birthday. So they don't have to make those up, but I give them each a different emotion so one is like, might be jealousy. One might be
Oh,
awe. And so it's
great.
it's a great, it doesn't matter what you say, it's how you say it is almost more important, or how you sing it. Right.
I love that. That's a great exercise.
Yeah. So cool. And so as far as like intermediate or advanced improvisers, like what do you think are some of the obstacles or some of the things that you've noticed that people that have got some experience, what are some of the things that they can be reminded of?
Well, after you've been improvising for a while, you do begin to develop sort of an instinct of things that are going to have a lot of legs and go for, oh, this character has a lot of emotional depth. This character can stick around for a 45-minute long form. Some characters that maybe don't have as much depth, you begin to realize, maybe there's not so much here.
Mm.
And that is a good thing about being an experienced improviser, but also a pitfall, because then you don't let yourself be so surprised. So I think it's really important as an experienced improviser to remember that thrill when you were first improvising, that everything was a surprise.
Mhm.
You didn't think about it. You didn't know anything around a corner. And it's important as a senior improviser. And I like working with all levels. I love people who don't even know how to spell improv and people who've been doing it for 20 years.
Yes.
Because when you're with a 20-year veteran, to get them to be surprised is so exciting.
Cool.
To remember to surprise yourself in improv.
It's cool. People don't know how to spell it. They use an E on the end and improve, right? Let's see here. Wait, what's the thing that you struggled with the most with your own improv?
Oh boy. Well, I hope we have another hour.
Yeah.
The answer to that is, do I belong here? I started way late, which really wasn't late, but at the time I was 28. I thought, oh, I'm way too old. It's too late. The ship sailed. There's nothing for me here. Too bad.
Mhm.
You've made your bed in another career. You don't get to find out about improv. That was wrong. That was completely wrong.
Mhm.
I was so judgmental that I didn't belong. I didn't have a liberal arts background. I didn't know who the Bronte sisters were. I didn't know references. I didn't read a lot of current events. I thought I was so ill prepared, and so I must not belong. And it took me forever to understand that who I am is completely useful, of value, and I'm worthy of being here in this improv community. I kept myself sort of in a bad kind of one down position, but then I began to realize that that was a form of ego, that I needed to shut up and participate and get over myself. If you're interested in doing this, then you belong here. And that's all it takes. I struggled for years about my belonging. And then I eventually, because of the joy I felt from improv, but it was because of my team, Frank Booth, the thrill of ensemble was what finally cured me of believing that I belong here, which is why, really the main reason why I teach ensemble, because when you're in an ensemble with trust, it's a experience like none other I found as a human.
Very cool. Wow. A ton of life lessons in improv.
Right?
Yeah. And that little voice, there's probably some element of it still there, right? And you still hear that voice of not belonging, or you're a step below, whatever. But
right.
You learn to get on friendlier terms with it, I assume.
That's exactly right. And when I tell people all the time, it doesn't go away. I've won Coach of the Year. Okay. That doesn't mean I still don't struggle with all sorts of stuff. Did you notice how I put in that little promotion for myself right here in the last few minutes? But I feel like I absolutely, you're right, Bob. That voice never goes away. And I've spoken to a couple of people who are like neurosurgeons or fighter pilots, and they're accomplished, they're decorated, and they're still like, yeah, I sometimes have to psych myself up to do my job.
Yeah, there's no such thing as being fearless. We'll always hear that voice, but we just got to put it in its place and do the work in spite of it. Chris wants to know, what is your advice on developing good relationships within scenes?
Oh, I do have advice for that, which is somebody needs to share something under the social surface. If you want to really create a strong relationship immediately, you need to share a little more deeply. It can't be something like, I like sugar in my coffee. It needs to be something like, I've never told you this about myself, but I lost a dog when I was a kid and I can't really have a pet. So there's something deep. And then if you can do anything to imply history. So share a little of yourself and say like, hey, gosh, last year this time it was raining. Boom, history.
Mhm. And isn't there an exercise where in a scene, one of the other partners needs to say, "I have a confession to make,"
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
which is like a nice little trick, because then that's going to open up a whole new world for that
Heck
scene.
yeah, it is. Confession prov, and then you're going to sing a song about it. Yes.
That sounds like a song. Sing it. That's great. That's and then we're heading to the stretch here. Let's just talk. Remind people that the charity that Liz has chosen is Stepping Stones Network, and I'll just remind you again, there is a link in the in our visual here of our template that you're watching that has a link to the page where you can send a donation, and we would appreciate your generosity. It's a great cause related to sex trafficking, which I know is not a lighthearted topic, but it's a serious one, and Liz has supported it through fundraising efforts in the past. And so if you go to compassimprov.org/donate, choose the amount of your choice. Those Compass is going to collect those through midnight or the end of the day on Friday, this coming Friday, and then we'll send a check. And we're going to match at least the first $50 too for this organization. And so please send those, and we will pass that on. And they are certainly aware that. That this coming, that Liz has chosen this, and I think some of their folks are watching us right now. So do that. Here's another question. So we talked a little about your tips for improvisers, but since coaching is a big thing that you coach coaches,
Yeah.
and so what is your best advice for people that want to be teachers? And I know we're just in the final minutes with squeeze in.
That's
What are some top things about somebody who wants to teach or coach improv? Yeah, what's the best steps to take or advice that you have?
Well, definitely trust your beckoning to that, because coaching improv is it's tricky. It's an interesting balance of nurturing and pushing people and bringing in a lot of bulky technical information, as you well know.
Mhm.
And so if you're drawn to it, definitely listen to that little voice inside you if you want to coach, and be willing to take coaching in little baby steps. Like maybe don't take on 3 teams at once. Just maybe take on a small group of people, 3 or 4 people. Be very clear on your goals. What do you want to accomplish? Do you want to ask them to help you learn how to coach? Do you want to create a group and do this more for them than you?
Mhm.
But the main thing that I would say is, don't be afraid to coach the kind of improv you want to watch. Like,
That's a good point.
yeah, I like a certain style of improv that is often poignant and gut wrenching, and I make a joke that I like improv that should be accompanied with a sad cello in the corner. But I kind of mean that. And then the funny will come, but really I like a foundation of depth and reality. So I'm not the person to coach a group that wants to do, say, inspired political commentary. I wouldn't be very good at that. And I don't enjoy watching that as much as I enjoy others. So don't be afraid to coach what you like.
Cool. So I know earlier somebody asked about the distinction between directing a show versus coaching a team, and I guess mine is because I don't think I've really coached a team in the way that you are describing, which is typical
Okay.
in long form. But I've taught improv, so I hold classes. I have drop-in classes. Is that a different animal in your?
It is. There's more crossover between teaching and coaching, actually, in an odd way, than coaching and directing. But teaching and coaching, for me, I prep myself to get ready for the goodbye. See, when I coach, I don't want to ever look forward to the goodbye of the team. But when I teach, I get ready. It's an 8-week goodbye. It's a 2-hour workshop goodbye. It's maybe a year long where I work with one person who goes through a bunch of my classes, and then it's a goodbye. Teaching has a goodbye at the end, and coaching coaching doesn't have to. It usually does.
Or an undefined ending point. Yeah.
There we go.
Till it comes. And
What
I guess
what do you think of that definition? Do you think, does that feel like for teaching, like that, you're going to have a goodbye?
yeah, and I guess well, for yeah, so the community college here, I do a 4-week class. That's the only structured thing that I do. Otherwise, I have drop-in classes, and so there's no ending to that. And there's some people that have been coming for years, and some people that come and go. They come
Right.
a lot of people come from one class, and we never see them again. But I have enough of a core people that circulate through. So that's the challenge too. When you do a drop-in class, is you always have somebody doing it sometimes for the first time. People have been doing it for months, and so you have to find that balance. It's a little
Yes, you do.
trickier with a drop-in class. But I think whenever you're teaching, wouldn't you have to always keep in mind the level of your students and speak to that, not try to do things too advanced, and never maybe assume that advanced people are really that they still need the fundamentals, right?
Well, actually, advanced people, I think, really appreciate going back to just the most simplest of exercises. That's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, awesome. So I think it's a good time to wrap this up. We just hit a little over an hour. Liz, this has been awesome. If people wanted to know more about you, or because I think in my Googling of you, I don't think I even found a Liz Allen website.
No, you did not. You did not.
Is that on
We're gonna have to. We'll discuss that later, Bob, when you're gonna
Okay.
teach me about better marketing skills. You can email me. I'll give you my email. People can contact me in my email.
Okay,
Or you
cool.
can find me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I don't ever post anything. I'm on Twitter. I don't ever post anything, but you can find me through those.
If you can hunt her down without being a stalker.
Well,
find her.
I mean, I happily will give out my email. It's
Okay.
so old. Cancel this part of the interview. Everything was great until Liz trips on words.
It's all good. So what is it? Is it just your name?
It's Liz Allen Improv at Comcast.net.
Comcast.net. Liz Allen Improv, all one word, and Allen is Allen.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
I think the rest of the spellings should, and improv is no E on the end. But well, this has been a blast. I have a feeling, we'll be more in touch because we have, there's a lot of overlap and mutual friends on Facebook, and so.
Oh yeah.
But thank you for being our second guest on this interview series.
I loved it.
I knew you didn't ask me to send you a list of questions. I didn't offer to send you one. We were true improvisers here.
Yes.
We just made it up as we went along.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed this so much, Bob. Thank you so much. It's an honor to follow Bill Cott. It's a real talk about going back long form, right?
Yeah, and he has roots in the '90s at Second City, and Stephen Colbert was his. You probably a lot of people that you knew back in the day.
Yeah,
there.
Bill and I crossed paths a lot. Like we did shows together over the years,
Cool.
way back when. So that's super fun to see that history.
And just to remind everybody, in March, our guest will be Ed Reggie, who has a long history of improv and theater work here in St. Louis, and then BJ Lang, who grew up in St. Louis but has been out in LA and done a lot of really cool things. He will be in April, and then some of the folks we talked about, like maybe Jimmy Carrane someday. Dave Rosowski's another one. I took one of his classes in LA.
You should interview those guys.
Yeah,
you get some scoop.
So cool.
Can I shout out to the Improv Shop? Is that an appropriate?
Oh yeah, please, because I know that you've done a lot of work there. So please do.
Yes, the Improv Shop is amazing in St. Louis. I think the general St. Louis community, improv community, is really special and unique. It's so supportive and warm and inclusive and inviting. The shop has always had such a warm hug waiting for me when I've come down and taught, and sometimes I've taught on Zoom. So I just think what's happening there in St. Louis is like the heart of improv.
Yeah, and they have a long-standing. It's a very established venue. Of course, it's been kind of dark since the pandemic, but it's on the edge of the Grove, and it's kind of an institution here. And so, thanks for pointing that out. Awesome, Liz. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your time, and thanks again. And we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you, Bob, and Compass
right.
Improv. I really appreciate it.
So long, everybody. Good night.